this video, we'll go over the more advanced features of the ResMed AirSense 10 so that you can customize your machine for the best night of sleep that you've ever had since starting CPAP therapy. I'm Ruben from RespShop.com, an online CPAP supplies retailer that served over 1 million people with sleep apnea over more than 16 years. So you've already got a pretty good handle on this whole CPAP thing and how your AirSense 10 works, but are you ready to become a master? Now, this video is not for beginners. We've actually already done a video for you guys, so click the card or the description link to head over to that one. But once you have a few weeks under your belt, come back here to take things to the next level. Still here? Excellent. In the beginning video, we looked at the My Options menu. There were 3 options here: ramp time, humidity level, and mask. And there were 2 programs you could run: a mask fit test and a humidifier warm-up. I assume all you guys are pros with this stuff already, but did you know that there is another more detailed settings menu with far more options? Well, there is, and we're going to look at it soon. Also, in the standard sleep report, there are only 3 simple data points: the usage hours for your machine, and then 2 faces that were green if you had a good mask seal and a working humidifier, and red ones if you didn't. Beginner stuff, right? Well, this report could be much more detailed too, as you'll see. I'm now going to go into full detail, minus the basics of the settings and report data available on your CPAP. That includes the advanced settings under the clinical menu and the plus sleep report and what it all means. First, let's look at the clinical settings. To get to these, you need to have My Options highlighted, and then press and hold the click wheel button and the home button at the same time for about 5 seconds. The screen should then change. Under the word Home, it will then say Exit Clinical Menu. Instead of the first option having an image of boxes and a tick with My Options written on it, it will have an image of cogwheels and the words Settings instead. Genius! If you want to get back to how it was, you can either scroll to Exit Clinical Menu and click on the wheel, or you can just press the Home button. But for now, highlight and click into the Settings menu. Now, you shouldn't mess around with the settings on your machine unless you know what you're doing and have consulted with a sleep professional, because many of these settings affect your therapy. But this is a masterclass video, right? So I'm assuming you've already done that and know the implications of what you're doing. As a reminder, there is no undo button. So with that said, let's get into it. Okay, so you're in the clinical settings menu. The top batch of settings are about your therapy. You can switch modes from auto set to CPAP. CPAP mode delivers a single constant pressure throughout the night, but it's old tech and very few people use that mode anymore. If you do select CPAP mode, there will be just a single pressure option that you can adjust. In auto set mode, there will be 2 pressure options: max pressure and min pressure. These settings dictate the range of pressures the automatic algorithm can move between when trying to get the right pressure for your sleep. The min pressure must always be below the max pressure, and the min pressure can go as low as 4.0 centimeters H2O, while the max pressure can go as high as 20.0. How these should be set will depend on your therapy needs. If your apnea-hypopnea index or AHI number is too high, you can try to nudge these numbers up. If you're looking for greater comfort, you can try lowering them. The other option, mask, you know about already as it was on the other menu. No beginners here. The next bunch of options are about your comfort. Ramp time and humidity you already know about, and there are no additional options within the clinical menu for these. Response can be standard or soft. Standard will use the normal algorithm to change pressure during the night. Soft will mean the machine changes pressure more gradually, which has a softer effect on the air pressure changes. Feel free to try and see if it improves comfort without compromising your therapy. Start pressure sets the pressure at the beginning of the ramp period. It can be as low as 4.0 and as high as your minimum pressure from your therapy settings. The last ones to mention from this section are about EPR, which stands for Expiratory Pressure Relief. What this feature does is reduce the air pressure coming into the mask when the machine detects that you are exhaling. The idea is to make breathing out against the pressure a bit easier. This is a feature that can be turned on or off. If it is turned on, it can then be set to full time or ramp only. Full time means that it's applied throughout the night, while ramp only means that it's only on during your ramp period. The level can also be set from 1 to 3. The level determines how much the pressure drops off when it detects exhaling, from 1 centimeter H2O to 3 centimeters H2O reduction accordingly. So the higher number you set for EPR, the greater the pressure relief on exhalation. The next settings on this menu are about accessories. You can select your tube type between standard 90mm and slimline 15mm diameter tubes. This helps the machine gauge the resistance the air will face as it goes through the tube and adjust the pressure coming from the unit to compensate. The A/B filter setting should be left off unless you are one of a very small number of people that have a large incline antibacterial filter to catch particulates as you sleep. Then we come to the options section of the options. The first option is titled Essentials, and it is here that you can activate the far more detailed sleep report we'll soon discuss. There's nothing to lose here as it gives you far more data in the menu, and you are, after all, becoming a master. So we suggest you change this from on to plus if you haven't already done so. And if you don't, you won't be able to access the sleep report. After this, there's a smart start stop option. If turned on, this will mean therapy will begin as soon as the unit detects you breathing through your mask and will stop automatically when you take it off, whether during the night or in the morning. This means you don't need to press the on-off button on the unit. Reminders is where you can set yourself reminders for replacing your CPAP consumables. You set a first date of the reminder and, if you wish, future reminders after every period of your choosing. This feature is just for your own sake. It won't affect your machine. And if you want to know how often we recommend changing those consumables, then there's a helpful link in the description below. Finally, the configuration setting is where you can change the language, date, time, and measurement units of your machine. All pretty self-explanatory. And you can also return the unit to its factory settings or wipe all the data entirely from here too. Okay, that's it for the settings menu. And with your new Plus report enabled, let's take a look at the new data on your sleep report. The top 4 metrics are the ones that you get on the standard sleep report, and they only apply to the last session that you had, which will typically be last night's sleep. Usage hours is pretty obvious. It tracks the hours of use you had in your last session. In other words, it tracks how long the machine was operating for. This data is important for compliance with your insurance company, as they often have minimum usage hours clauses for CPAP therapy that they're paying for. The next data is events per hour, which is another name for the AHI index. An event can either be an apnea event or a hypopnea event. There's a slight variation in what is classed as an apnea or a hypopnea, and we've done a video on that as well. Again, you can find it in the description. But ResMed's criteria on what an apnea event is one where there has been a 75% reduction in airflow that lasts 10 seconds or longer. And a hypopnea event is one that's had a 50% reduction in airflow for 10 seconds or longer. So apneas are more severe than hypopneas. But both types of events are counted as you sleep, and the average number of events per hour from the last session is calculated and then presented as an events per hour value that will appear on this report, which is, as I said, your AHI index. The next data point is a face by mask seal. This will be either green and smiling or red and sad. If your mask didn't leak for more than 24 liters of air per minute for more than 25% of the night, then you'll have a green smiley face. Well done you. This is the figure that ResMed has settled on as indicating a good mask seal. A bad mask seal can lead to more noise, a dry mouth, dry eyes, and it can reduce your therapy effectiveness as the leak can affect the air pressure too. But if it's green, you're golden. And if not, watch our video on my top 7 tips to getting a better mask seal and check back at this menu after you've implemented some of those. After this is the humidifier face. This one is the simplest of the lot. If your humidifier was on and working in the last session, it's a green smile. And if it was off or broken, you get a red sad face. Scrolling down takes you to the More Info section, and this is only available if you activate the Plus Sleep Report from the clinical settings menu I talked about earlier. As I mentioned, the data before only concerned the last sleep session that you had, but here you can look at the averages of data over a given period. This gives you a better indication of how your therapy is working over the medium to long term, rather than just giving you a snapshot of your last sleep. The period can be set from a day, a week, a month, 3 months, or 6 months, and whatever you set here will update the rest of the data displayed. So what is the data? Well, first, there are days used and days used 4 or more hours. These score you out of the number of days within the period based on whether you turn the machine on at all during that day for days used, and whether you had it running for a minimum of 4 hours in that day for days used 4 or more hours. So if you set the period to the last week and you turn the machine on every weekday but not the weekend, you will get a score of 5 out of 7 for days used. Average usage totals up all the time the machine was operating for over the time period and divides it by the number of days in that period. So it gives you your average daily usage. while used hours just gives the raw total of hours the machine was operating for over the entire period. Simple. Next comes pressure, and this one's a bit tricky. You might assume that it is the average pressure the machine was providing over the period selected, but it isn't. The figure tells you the pressure the machine was operating at or below for 95% of the time of use over that period. Let me break that idea down a bit for you. As you know, the air pressure coming from the machine varies through the night according to your needs that the algorithm detects. There will be some spikes in pressure and some troughs and lows. This data metric ignores the highest pressures that will only use for at most 5% of your sleep time, which is 1/20th of your sleep, or roughly the worst 20 minutes over an average night. Once it's ignored the worst parts, it looks at the highest pressure left over and displays it to you. The reason for this is so that you know the pressure required to keep you asleep for the majority of the night, which is a helpful thing to know. After pressure comes leak, which is a simple average of your leak rate over the selected period. Getting this below 24 liters per minute would be ideal, which would mean lots of green smiley faces on your sleep report. AHI next. This gives you your apnea-hypopnea index averaged out over the period. Remember, the AHI gives you the average number of apneas or hypopneas that you're having each hour over that period. Total AI gives you your apnea index averaged over that period. Apneas are worse than hypopneas, so this only counts apneas per hour, again averaged over that period selected. Lastly, central AI counts only central apnea events per hour averaged as usual. Central apneas are apneas that occur even when there are no obstructions to your airway. The cause of these apneas are different. Instead of them being caused by physical obstructions, they're caused by a failure of the signaling from the brain to your diaphragm that controls your breathing. The therapy for this can be a bit different from obstructive sleep apnea. So if you have not been diagnosed with central sleep apnea and this is at or above 10, it may be worth consulting with your doctor about it. Alright, now we've been through all the clinical settings and the Plus Sleep Report. By the powers vested in me by RespShop.com, I can confer on you the title of Master of the AirSense 10. Congratulations! Why not celebrate by having a good night's sleep? Good night and sleep tight. Bye bye for now.